that I've stumbled across here as I've been perusing the news. Let's take a look together. Philippine volcano belches dark plume. Villagers evacuated is the headline. Let's take a look. Manila, Philippines. A small volcano near the Philippine capital belched a dark plume of steam and ash into the sky in a brief explosion Thursday, prompting officials to start evacuating thousands of villagers from high-risk areas. Government experts said magmatic materials came into contact with water in the main crater of Taal volcano in Batangas province, setting off the steam-driven blast with no accompanying volcanic earthquake. They said it's unclear if the volcanic unrest could lead to a full-blown eruption. It's just one explosive event. It's too early to tell. Renato Solidum of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology said at a news conference. 3 smaller steam-driven emissions occurred Thursday night, he said. The agency raised the alarm at 311-meter Taal, one of the world's smallest volcanoes, to the third of a 5-step warning system, meaning magma is near or at the surface, and activity could lead to hazardous eruption in weeks. Alert level 5 means a life-threatening eruption that could endanger communities is occurring. Mark Timble, a spokesman for the government's disaster response agency, said officials started to evacuate residents from 5 high-risk villages. Up to 14,000 residents may have been moved temporarily away from the restive volcano, he said. Officials reminded people to stay away from a small island scenic where Taal is located and is considered a permanent danger zone, along with a number of nearby lakeside villages. ABS-CBN network broadcast videos of some residents with their belongings in cars and motorcycles forming a line at a gasoline station. Residents said they did not feel any tremors, but reported a volcanic sulfur smell. Batangas Governor Ermelando Mandaras said evacuation camps, trucks, food packs, and face masks were ready in case the volcanic unrest escalated and more people needed to be moved to safety. There were concerns that crowding in evacuation camps might spread the coronavirus in a region that has seen a spike in cases in recent months. Taal erupted in January 2020, displacing hundreds of thousands of people and sending clouds of ash to Manila, about 65 kilometers to the north, where the main airport was temporarily shut down. The Philippines lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire, a region prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. A long dormant volcano, Mount Pinatubo, blew its top north of Manila in 1991, one of the biggest volcanic eruptions of the 20th century, killing hundreds of people. So this is a news story from VOA, Voice of America online, right? From their East Asia and Pacific region news. This was July 2nd, 2021 at 1:23 a.m. But if we look just a little bit more, continuing with the Philippines, has the same photograph, but this one is now about 8 hours later. There's been an update. Philippine villagers fear twin perils, volcano and COVID-19. Laurel, Philippines. Thousands of people were being evacuated from villages around a rumbling volcano near the Philippine capital Friday. But officials said they faced another dilemma of ensuring emergency shelters will not turn into epicenters of COVID-19 infections. The alert was raised to 3 on a 5-level scale after Taal volcano blasted a dark gray plume into the sky Thursday. The 5-minute steam and gas-driven explosion was followed by 4 smaller emissions, but the volcano was generally calm on Friday, volcanologists said. Level 3 means magma is near or at the surface, and activity could lead to hazardous eruption in weeks, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. Level 5 means a life-threatening eruption is occurring that could endanger communities. The agency asked people to stay away from a small island in a scenic lake where Taal sits and is considered a permanent danger zone, along with a number of nearby lakeside villages in Batangas province, south of Manila. An eruption of Taal last year displaced hundreds of thousands of people and briefly closed Manila's international airport. However, the volcano agency's chief, Renato Solidum, said it was too early to know if the volcano's current unrest will lead to a full-blown eruption. The preemptive evacuations that began late Thursday involved residents in 5 high-risk villages in the lakeside towns of Laurel and Agoncillo. Agoncillo, anyway. More than 14,000 people may have to be moved temporarily away from the volcanoes, said Mark Timble, a spokesman from the government's disaster response agency. Town officials, however, faced an extra predicament of ensuring emergency shelters. Usually school buildings, basketball gymnasiums, and even Roman Catholic church grounds would not become coronavirus hotspots. Displaced villagers were asked to wear face masks and were sheltered in tents set safely apart, requiring considerably more space than in pre-pandemic times. In Laurel Town, Imelda Reyes feared for her and her family's safety in their home near the volcano, and in the crowded grade school turned evacuation center where they took shelter Friday. If we stay home, the volcano can explode anytime, Reyes told the Associated Press. But here, just one sick person can infect all of us. Both are dangerous choices. Reyes, who washes laundry and has 4 children, wept in desperation as she said she and her husband, a corn farmer, wanted to leave the evacuation camp for a friend's house in northern Nueva Ecija province, but lamented that they did not have money for the bus fare. Most evacuation camps have set up isolation areas in case anyone began showing COVID-19 symptoms. It's doubly difficult now. Before, we just asked people to rush to the evacuation centers and squeeze themselves in as much as possible, said disaster response officer Junfrance de Villa of Agoncillo town. Now we have to keep a close eye on numbers. We're doing everything to avoid congestion, de Villa told the Associated Press by telephone. A nearby town safely away from the restive volcano could accommodate up to 12,000 displaced Agoncillo residents in pre-pandemic times, but could only shelter half of that now. A laid-back town of more than 40,000 people, Agoncillo has reported more than 170 COVID-19 cases, but only about a dozen remain ill. At least 11 residents have died, he said. The 311-meter Taal, one of the world's smallest volcanoes, erupted in January last year, displacing hundreds of thousands of people and sending clouds of ash to Manila, about 65 kilometers to the north, where the main airport was temporarily shut down. Heavy ashfall also buried an abandoned fishing community which thrived for years in the shadow of Taal on an island in Taal Lake, and shut down a popular district of tourist inns, restaurants, spas, and wedding venues. The Philippines lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire, a region prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. A long dormant volcano, Mount Pinatubo, blew its top north of Manila in 1991 in one of the biggest volcanic eruptions of the 20th century, killing hundreds of people. And in other news from the Philippines, oh, well, this was quite a while ago. But the point is, people in this area are under a double threat. As the woman was talking about, their home is very close to the erupting volcano. There's a danger of eruption. But another danger lies in wait for them if they choose the evacuation center, because COVID is still a real factor in the Philippines. What's the best thing to do? It's really difficult to say. The best thing would be, as she said, that she wishes that they could go and spend time with their friends in a more remote village farther away, but that requires transportation, some kind of bus fare that they don't have. Many Philippine families are living hand to mouth, so to speak. They just don't have the resources to be able to pick up and, even with a handful of their belongings, travel any distance to get away from the dangers. What are they to do? What else in the news in East Asia Pacific? U.S. targets Myanmar's military with another round of sanctions. The United States on Friday announced sanctions against military officials and individuals and companies tied to Myanmar's military in the latest response to the February 1 coup in the Southeast Asian country. The U.S. Treasury Department officially sanctioned 7 senior military officials for the government's use of lethal force against pro-democracy supporters. It also sanctioned 15 individuals who are family members of previously sanctioned officials and whose financial networks have contributed to military officials' ill-gotten gains. The Treasury statement emphasized that these sanctions are not directed at the citizens of Myanmar and are intended to increase financial burdens on Myanmar's military by cutting off all 22 designated individuals from any assets they may have in the United States. In a complementary action, the Department of Commerce restricted trade exports to 4 companies it said support the military's ongoing actions. Commerce identified the companies as King Royal Technologies Company Limited, which provides satellite communication services to the Myanmar military, and 3 copper mining entities with financial ties to the regime: Wambao Mining and its 2 subsidiaries, Myanmar Wambao Mining Copper Limited and Myanmar Yangtze Copper Limited. All 4 companies were placed on the department's trade blacklist, officially known as the Entity List, which restricts U.S. exports to entities on the list with limited exceptions. We continue encouraging like-minded allies and partners to join the United States in imposing costs on these 4 entities and clamping down on other sources of revenue that support the repressive and undemocratic activities of the Burmese army, of the Burmese military, said Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo in a Friday statement. The U.S. government will continue to promote accountability for the perpetrators of the coup and stand with the people of Burma and their democratic institutions. The increased restrictions come just days after the UN released its latest update on the continuing violence against citizens in Myanmar. According to the report, the military has killed at least 883 unarmed people and detained over 5,200 activists, journalists, and opponents of the coup. An additional 2,000 people with active warrants for their arrest are in hiding. The UN team in Myanmar continues to strongly condemn the widespread use of lethal force and other serious violations of human rights, said UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric. Our colleagues underscore that the use of excessive force by security forces, including the use of live ammunition, must stop and must stop now. Myanmar's military overthrew the newly elected government of the National League for Democracy in February over claims that the election results were fraudulent. The country's election commission rejected the military's claim of fraud. Despite a lack of evidence, the military overtook the government by invoking an article from the country's 2008 constitution that allows it to declare a one-year state of emergency. During the coup, the military arrested Aung San Suu Kyi, who is the leader of National League for Democracy Party and received a Nobel Peace Prize in 1991 for her efforts to democratize the country. In June, 119 member countries of the UN, including the US, officially condemned the coup. Hey there, Theo, how you doing? Just reading some news here. Just seeing what's going on in East Asia and the Pacific region. These are some headlines from Voice of America. Here's a headline from this region. U.S. concerned about report China is expanding missile silos. Oh, no. Washington. American researchers using commercial satellite imagery say China appears to be significantly expanding the number of launch silos for its arsenal of intercontinental range ballistic missiles, raising fears that nuclear weapons will become a new issue of contention between Washington and Beijing. Using images provided by the satellite imaging company Planet, two researchers from the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey found that China is building 119 silos in the desert of the northwestern province of Gansu. Jeffrey Lewis, one of the researchers, told VOA that development is likely for China's DF-41 ICBM, which is believed to be capable of carrying multiple nuclear warheads. With an estimated range of nearly 7,000 kilometers and possible capability to carry up to 10 warheads, researchers believe the missiles can reach targets in the United States. We believe China is expanding its nuclear forces in part to maintain a deterrent that can survive a U.S. first strike and retaliate in sufficient numbers to defeat U.S. military missile defenses, Lewis said in a summary of findings provided to VOA. In response to the findings, the State Department said that the U.S. is concerned about China's rapid expansion of its nuclear capabilities. These reports and other developments suggest that the PRC's nuclear arsenal will grow more quickly and to a higher level than perhaps previously anticipated, State Department spokesman Ned Price said in a briefing on Thursday. He called the buildup concerning. It raises questions about the PRC's intent, and for us, it reinforces the importance of pursuing practical measures to reduce nuclear risks, he continued. We encourage Beijing to engage with us on practical measures to reduce the risk of destabilizing arms races, potentially destabilizing tensions. The Chinese embassy in Washington did not respond to a request from VOA for comment. In 2020, the Department of Defense estimated that China had around 100 ICBMs and will double that number in the coming years. The researchers said that the 119 new silos are spread across approximately 1,800 square kilometers near Yumen, a city in Gansu province, with each spaced approximately 3 kilometers apart. Images show that construction began in March 2020, but most building was done since February 2021, suggesting an extremely rapid pace of construction over the past few months, the summary said. Timothy Heath, a senior international and defense researcher for the policy research group, the RAND Corporation, told VOA by email that the silos raise the credibility of China's nuclear force. It shows China intends to expand its inventory of nuclear weapons. This means China is raising the potential risk and cost of escalation in any conflict along China's periphery, he said. Worst case scenario analysis. Other researchers warned that the calculations might be worst case scenario assumptions. James Acton, co-director of the Nuclear Policy Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, said there are a lot of questions to ask before concluding that China is expanding its nuclear arsenal at such a rapid speed. In an article published in the Washington Post, Acton said that there are still debates regarding how many warheads China's missiles can carry. He also pointed out there is a possibility that China is mirroring the approach called the shell game, designed by the United States in the late 1970s for basing some of its missiles. During the Cold War, the United States created a plan to build multiple launch shelters for each missile, 23 for one to be exact. The missiles were regularly moved among silos to make it impossible for the Soviet Union to target US land-based ICBMs. The plan was adopted by Carter administration, but was later changed by the Reagan administration. Lewis agreed that is a possibility. China likely has similar concerns about the survivability of silo-based ICBMs and may rotate a smaller number of ICBMs among a large number of operational silos, he added. Acton also pointed out that China still has a relatively small nuclear arsenal compared to the US. According to the Pentagon, China has a warhead stockpile in the low 200s. For comparison, the United States possesses around 3,800 nuclear warheads, of which around 1,750 are deployed, Acton wrote. The US has repeatedly reached out to China for negotiations on nuclear arms. In May, the US disarmament ambassador, Robert Wood, said at a UN conference that China continues to resist discussing nuclear risk reduction bilaterally with the US. China's envoy, Ji Zhaoyu, responded by saying that Beijing is ready to engage, but only on the basis of equality and mutual respect. Heath from the RAND Corporation said that in view of the new developments, the US may seek to press for arms control talks with China, but it's doubtful China will accept such controls given the small size of its nuclear arsenal. The US may also need to build more anti-missile defenses, he said. Acton said a quid pro quo might work. If the United States wants to engage in arms control, the kind of idea that I think is worth exploring is a quid pro quo, by which the US agrees to limit its missile defenses, for example, by agreeing not to develop or deploying missile defenses in space, in return for China agreeing not to produce any more nuclear material with which it could augment its arsenal, he said, in an analysis video posted by Carnegie. Okay, so more excitement. Yeah, reminds me of what, 1984. So we get over the Cold War with, in 1984 it was what, Oceania and Europe and Americas or whatever. They were always, two of them were always fighting against the other, and so on. Peace was declared between two of them, then war would break out with the third, and so on. So we're kind of quiet about Russia these days, more or less, not completely, of course. But now it's China that we're all worried about. During the height of the Cold War, China was just kind of this vague worry in the back of our minds, but now it seems to have taken a prominent place within the collective conscious of the United States. Okay. All right. So anyway, I just thought I'd see what's going on in the world and share it with you. And I've done that. And I've been on here for how long? Where's my little thing? I don't know how long I've been on. Then there used to be a little number that told me how long I was on. Oh well. Anyway, yeah. That's all for today. I'll see you again in the funny papers. Bye bye.